Senate Finance Committee unveiling the text of President Trump's bill yesterday. It includes major tax reforms and even steeper Medicaid cuts than the House called for.
I guess I should have seen that coming, I suppose. There were steep cuts in the House version of Trump's budget bill, and some senators had implied that they could not support the Senate version of the bill if it cut Medicaid as much as the House was asking for. That led me to believe, because I remain at my advanced age clinically naive, that they would cut it less. They seem to, at least in the current draft, be moving in the opposite direction. Now, nothing is final in the Senate bill, let alone when they actually have to make those two bills work together. But it does in fact cut it more. And if that is the case, that could be bad for the Republicans long term, because the polling is very clear that people do not want these cuts. And we'll get to that polling. But first, in this new Senate legislation, it would lower the healthcare provider taxes in states that chose to expand Medicaid to 3.5%. That's down from 6% in the House bill, which means that the burden on states to fund Medicaid could be higher under the Senate's version. Under the prior version, under the House, there was an estimate that 16,600 people would die as a result of losing access or foregoing care. I would presume that if you cut even more people will die. I'll leave that for us to, tragically and in a depressed fashion cover in future years. But anyway, Josh Hawley, one of those that I cited, is opposing these cuts. And one of the reasons I believe they wouldn't do as big cuts, he has been very critical of the idea of these cuts, saying it could hurt rural hospitals in his state. He says, it sounds to me like this needs some work. But I guess the wrong sort of work has been done since then. And they still have a fairly narrow margin there. Yeah. So I don't know, it seems risky to me, Alex, both in the short and the long term. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it does seem risky because a lot of the people that are most impacted by this are the Trump MAGA base voters who have to deal with these health issues. The other thing that I'm looking at from a California perspective that's really interesting is, we know one of the few unifying things in the Republican Party has been tax cuts. And for blue state Republicans, there's this issue of the state and local tax exemption called SALT. And there's folks that are in the districts that make the difference between a Republican House and a Democratic House. People like Young Kim and David Valadeo and some of these people that are in districts that are really, really close. And they've been saying, we are going to get rid of this state and local tax thing. That's the hill we're gonna die on. This is the biggest issue. We're gonna get you a tax cut, because basically it had been a sort of an unlimited thing that you could deduct. And then it went to a $10,000 deduction max for Trump's last tax cut. So for a whole lot of people in blue states, the Trump tax cut was actually a huge tax increase. And a lot of those people are the donors to the Republican Party. In the Republican House, they negotiated it to expand to $40,000, which still wasn't enough for a lot of people, but at least they said that they could claim a win, like we did something. But in the new Senate side, they're saying, nope, back to 10. Screw you guys. And we don't have a lot of blue state senators, so deal with it. And so will the Republicans in the House push back on that? Will that be a hill that they die on? Or will they just roll over and basically say, sorry guys, this is the one thing we've been talking to you about for 2 years, but we couldn't deliver?
I'm for so many reasons glad that you're on today. I had just assumed they would stick with the House version of that. I hadn't seen that they cut it back down to 10,000.
Yeah, basically a giant middle finger to the House Republicans on that one.
Yeah, and you pointed out definitely in California, there's good examples of Republicans whose careers could ride on that. In New York as well, theoretically, and
that's enough to be control of the House. I mean, if they flip those seats, just those few seats in New York and California, that could be the difference between majority.
Yeah, exactly. Now, let's very briefly just let you know what people think about this. So in terms of what Americans think about the level of spending on different programs, when you go to Medicaid, 18% of the country thinks too much is spent on it. 50% say too little. Wow. So there's a lot of people that say about the right amount, but very few people think that we're overpaying on this. So just going in, it was always gonna be a difficult sell because people like these programs. But let's actually bring that up for one more second, because that is good news for us. I just also wanna just confirm to people that, and this is bad for us, on the military, for me at least, for the military, 37% think we're spending the right amount. 31% think we're spending too little on our military. We're spending like $1 trillion a year, and they're like, could be more. So we still have some work to do in terms of the rhetoric, perhaps, us libs. But anyway, and Medicaid, 50% think too little is being spent. On education, Social Security, Medicare, it's even more. And so right now in this bill, they're coming for Medicaid, but there's already talk about Social Security and Medicare. That is gonna be even more politically dicey. And so this is not a popular move that they're making. You point out the SALT stuff also could hurt them in certain areas. But overall, this bill is just, it's what was predicted. I mean, we knew going in, this is what Republican administrations do, but could be very damaging to them in midterms that historically don't go very well for the president's party regardless.
And healthcare has been a voting issue for people. Just ask all the Democrats that lost because of the Obamacare bill initially, and then as it was around longer, won because of the Obamacare bill. This is something that drives people to the polls one way or another. We saw abortion, obviously, an extension of healthcare as something that drove people to the polls. And because it's something that is so personal. Most of the rest of this stuff is conceptual, but your healthcare bills is something that everybody has to deal with. And so I know that the Republicans that are looking long-term know that they're potentially dealing with real long-term brand damage here. But President Trump, who presumably is not running again, may not be thinking long-term and may be focused on what he needs in the short term and may not be that focused on the brand of republicanism as somebody who's never really cared about that.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. I should start doing this with all of our co-hosts. So checking in, 2028 is your current position is standard presidential election. Donald Trump's not on the ticket.
Well, I didn't say that.
I'm asking you. Do you have a position as of right now?
I don't know. I mean, honestly, I think a lot of it depends on, frankly, how the next couple of years go. And does some of this chaos that we're having right now turn out to be a political plus or a political minus for him? The situation in Iran, the Medicare situation we talked about. I mean, a lot of what he's potentially going to have to do is deeply unpopular. So there may not be that much of to do what you're talking about, which is essentially make him the vice president or some workaround for the Constitution that Bannon's been throwing around, would require the Republican base to be so unbelievably into him that they'd be willing to jump through those hoops. And right now they are. The question is, a year and a half from now, are we in the same political reality that we are now? And I don't think we have any way to really know that.
Yeah, and what is the state of Donald Trump's body and mind in another 18 months of this? I'm going to be fully gray-haired by then. What'll be left of him? So
well, I don't think we're going to see gray hair. I'm pretty sure about that. Whether there are gray roots or not is another question.